Hello and welcome to Legal Org. In this video, we will discuss an overview of the Transfer of Property Act 1882. We will go through the definition of property, mode of transfer, nature of property, it may be movable property or immovable property, what are the statutes that are covering movable property or immovable property. Then we will go through some other definition of property like tangible property, intangible property, and intellectual property. In the last slide, we will go through a brief detail of the contents of Transfer Property Act. In order to understand the concept of property, we have to go through its definition. The Transfer of Property Act nowhere defines the concept of property. But when we go through the Benami Transaction Act 1988, under Section 2C, property is defined as property means property of any kind, whether movable or immovable, tangible or intangible, and includes any right or interest in such property. Again, this definition talks about some kinds of property like movable, immovable, tangible, intangible, and it also talks about some kind of rights and interest. So, before going into these terms, we have to understand property in a simple term. In a simple term, property means anything to which any person may have legal title. Now, what is the term legal title means? As we all know, legal means something enforceable by law. So, legal title comprises a bundle of rights. It may comprise of right to sell, right to possess, and right of enjoyment. There are some traditional principles related to property rights. These rights include the control over the use of property, right to take any benefit from those property, right to transfer or sell that property, or right to exclude others from that property. So these are some kinds of rights that are involved with the concept of property. In this definition of property, we discussed many new terms like movable, immovable, tangible, intangible. We will go through these terms in further lecture. So for now, you have to just understand that property means anything to which any person may have legal title. I hope you understood the concept of property. So let's move forward and discuss the concept of transfer and mode of transfer. According to Merriam-Webster dictionary, transfer means to convey from one person, place, or situation to another. This conveyance may be done wholly or partially. Whole conveyance meaning the transfer of all the rights related to the concerned property. On the contrary, partial may be in the form of the transfer of possession only, as in the case of lease and license under the Transfer of Property Act, where only possession is given while the real ownership or the title to the property still lies with the previous person. A property can be transferred by two methods. First, by the act of parties, and second, by operation of law. When it comes to the transfer of property by the act of parties, it is further classified as the testamentary and inter vivos. The transfer through testamentary method, it is covered by the Indian Succession Act 1925. When it comes to inter vivo, that is between two living persons, this type of transfer of property is covered by the Transfer of Property Act 1882. The second method of transfer, that is by the operation of law, it may be through the insolvency proceeding, in which upon the order of a court a property can be transferred, or it can be done through the execution of decree. Moving to the nature of property, that is movable and immovable property. According to the nature of property, it can be classified into two categories, movable and immovable. Movable properties are covered through the Sales of Goods Act, and immovable property are covered by the Transfer of Property Act 1882. Sometimes it is misunderstood that the Transfer of Property Act 1882 only covers immovable property. In reality, it also covers the transfer of movable property, as in the case of exchange given under Section 118 of this Act. By now, we heard some kind of property like movable and immovable, tangible and intangible, and intellectual property. A detailed video will cover the definition of movable and immovable property, the difference between movable and immovable property, and what they includes or excludes. So for now, we are going to cover the definition of tangible, intangible, and intellectual property. Tangible property refers to any kind of property that can be generally moved, touched, or felt. So tangible property are kind of property that are physical in nature. Some of the examples of this type of property are furniture, clothing, jewelry, art, writings, etc. Intangible property. This type of property refers to the property that cannot be moved, touched, or felt. There is no fixed physical shape or size of this type of property. It represents something valuable. It may be in the form of negotiable instruments, securities, or some service. The third one is the intellectual property. Intellectual property refers to that kind of property which comes into existence due to the creation of mind. Some of the examples of this type of property may be the copyright, trademark, or patents. Moving forward to an overview of the contents of the Transfer of Property Act 1882. Transfer of Property Act, an act to amend the law relating to the transfer of property by the act of parties. Sometimes these MCQ questions were asked like how many chapters are in this act, how many sections are in this act, when this act was passed, when this act came into force, what is the number of this act of 1882. This is Act 4 of 1882, passed on 17th of February 1882 and came into force on 1st of July 1882. This act was signed by Lord Ripon. A total of 8 chapters are in this act, and in all these 8 chapters there are 137 sections. Chapter 1, that is preliminary, covers section 1 to 4. It contains short title, then interpretation clause inside section 3, which is very important for the understanding of Transfer of Property Act. In chapter 2, transfer of property by act of parties is covered from section 5 to section 53. This chapter contains what may be transferred, who are competent to transfer, transfer for the benefit of unborn, the concept of perpetuity, and the doctrine of election. Third chapter covers sale of immovable property from section 54 to 57. Moving forward towards the fourth chapter, that is mortgage, it is covered under section 58 to 104 of this act. The concept of lease, exchange, gift, and ex-naval claims are provided under Chapter 5, 6, 7, and 8 respectively. Under Chapter 5, lease is covered from Section 105 to 117. Exchange is covered under Chapter 6 from Section 118 to 121. Gift is covered Chapter 7 from Section 122 to 29, and the ex-naval claim is covered under Chapter 8. So this is all about an overview of the Transfer of Property Act 1882. In the next lecture, we will discuss the concept of movable and immovable property. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please share, like, subscribe, and don't forget to press the bell icon.